playing poker. She pulls out this wad of cash, just throws it on there. And I was like, how the heck did you get that? She's like, oh, it's tips. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, I just got a tip. I'm like, wait, so you got paid your normal like $7 an hour, and then on top of that, you get tips, like even probably double what? She's like, yeah. I was like, okay, that's what I've got to do.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Abundant Journey podcast. Thank you for going along with us on this journey as we are plowing through 2024. As always, I'm your host, Nick James. Hanging out with me today is Nick Offenkamp. Nick, how are you?
Hey, I am good. It's been a good start to the day. We finished the CrossFit Open this morning. I had a client I met for a closing, and of course, my favorite part of any day and any week is being able to sit down with you and an amazing guest on the Abundant Journey podcast. So I'm feeling awesome. I won't steal any thunder whatsoever in introducing our guest, but I am excited. I'll throw it back to you to bring him in.
I love it. And I probably won't do justice, but Dane Fitch is hanging out with us today. He is an entrepreneur, real estate extraordinaire, house flipper, lender, father, and many, many other things I'm sure to add to that list. But Dane, thanks for hanging out with us. You are here in the Pacific Northwest. You and I were introduced pretty recently together. And by the words of the community, you are the lender of choice when it comes to flipping and homes. So, man, how are you? Thanks for hanging out with us.
Oh, thank you, man. Gosh, I got to have you guys introduce me and other things like that. I never get these types of introductions. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing well, just, plugging away. And yeah, you're right. You blink and it's like we're already through almost the first quarter of the year and things are moving. So, but gosh, we in the Pacific Northwest, we've got some great weather right now coming in. That's totally unexpected. I tell all my other friends, that live in other better areas that we don't get a spring, we get a mud season here. And
that's right.
We just think there's like this socially etiquette that you're allowed to change plans if there's a randomly like nice day, like it's socially okay to like cut
so
off
true.
Clear the schedule and 100%. Yeah. No, I've held all of my afternoon meetings with an open hand, recognizing that either myself or somebody else is probably going to cancel and take a spontaneous trip to the beach or something.
I know I was supposed to go to a investor meetup last night, and I hope they're not listening right now, but because it was so nice, I thought, oh, there's probably not going to be that many people that show up to it because it's nice. I'm not going to show up.
100%. Absolutely. So are you a Northwest native? Did you grow up out here?
Yeah. So I grew up went to Reynolds High School right here in Troutdale. And when I went to college, I actually went down to Southern California. I think all Oregonians have this like initial infatuation, if not slight jealousy, if not, turns into annoyance with Californians. But so I ended up going to a Christian college down in Southern California, right near Disneyland, right near Cal State Fullerton. I worked at Disneyland for a little while. And
awesome.
met my wife at college. And then I got stuck down there for, I don't know, my 20s. It wasn't until my 30s that I came back here. And I've missed it ever since. There's something weird about being like, again, whenever an Oregonian or Pacific Northwesterner sees the weather, that it's nice, you feel like you have to be productive. And I remember in that first year, my freshman year in college, being like, my God, I'm exhausted. And someone was like, it's going to be sunny tomorrow and sunny the next day. And the day after that, you can just like hang out. Like, it's okay.
That's awesome. I love it. What was your role at Disney?
So I didn't actually work in Disneyland. I worked in downtown Disney. I was a server. This is funny. This is getting into going back even further. When I was 16, I got my first job as a boat washer, and I didn't get minimum wage. I was $7.25 instead of $6.50. And my buddies and we would play poker all the time. And one of my friends had a girlfriend. She worked at Sherry's, and for us to scrounge up $20 to play poker, that was a lot back, 20 years ago. And she comes in halfway through, like at 11 o'clock, and we're playing poker. She pulls out this wad of cash, just throws it on there. And I was like, how the heck did you get that? She's like, oh, it's tips. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, I just got a tip. I'm like, wait, so you got paid your normal like $7 an hour, and then on top of that, you get tips, like even probably double what? She's like, yeah. I was like, okay, that's what I've got to do. When I I get it. And just like anything else, the hard part about getting into being a server and everything, you have to have experience before someone will hire you. Like,
Right.
how do you get
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. Which just that's just true in so many things in life. So in college, I was on the soccer team, and I one of my buddies, like, I was so poor. I grew up very we financed our way into the middle class, but we were not, I think I went to college with like $200 to my name, and I ran out of gas in like the first 6 weeks. I just had to leave my car because I didn't have any money. But I got a job while I was playing soccer, and it was at one of the restaurants in Disney, or in downtown Disney, actually. So
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with. Have you been to Disneyland, Nick, with your kids lately?
Do you know, not with my kids. My wife and I, we went down there when she was pregnant with our first. So it's been 10 years since I've been down there. But yeah, I don't know where you were going with that.
Oh no! So in downtown Disney, there's this big, huge bar area down there, and I worked at the fine dining restaurant up top there. And so I was actually a food runner at first. I wasn't even a waiter because you have to like work your way up. But I
Yeah.
got tips, and so that was like really helpful. That was my first time of like saving, right? That was the first, like, that was the break of like me depending on my parents to purchase everything. I'd had summer jobs and stuff in high school and stuff, but it's like you always blow that money, like a couple months after you have those jobs. And I didn't work during school because I played sports. And don't let the dad bod fool you here. I used to be much, much more athletic. Which, funny enough, Nick, I do a CrossFit type workout too. We have our I forget what they call them, but the where they
Like the,
check your times and everything like that here next to me.
yeah. The workout of the day and
Yeah.
yeah.
And I love it. I've tried all the different, going to the gym. I'll never push myself. I think because I make decisions all day, and I'm like, I just need someone when I go somewhere to like yell and scream at me and tell me what to do, where I don't have to make the decision of what to do. And I
It
have the
is
social.
so nice to show up and just it's on the whiteboard. And I've been working out a little bit in the evenings with Nick here too, and he's been generous enough to put together a plan for those. And the other day he was asking me, he's like, if there's ever things that you want to do, like you could plan it out. No. That's not what I'm about. You tell me what to do. I'm very happy to do it.
Yeah, I just need to know that that's not, because I won't do it if it's not.
Yeah,
totally.
But yeah, I worked there as a tips person, and it was great because I was making enough money to be able to like pay for my cell phone at that time and pay for like just the things, as a college student. I still took out a ton in loans to pay for college, but I was actually able to like live off of it. And that was like that first break of, okay, like I should save money. And because my parents, I mean, they've still to this day live paycheck to paycheck. It doesn't matter if they make $200,000 or $20,000 in a year. They're those types of people that just they spend emotionally. And so for me, it was like, I could like save money. And I remember the first thing, it was like 6 months into it, I'd saved $1,000, which was huge. I just put it away.
right.
And my car broke down. It's 1993, like Toyota Tercel or something, and it was a stick shift. I didn't even have air conditioning down in Southern California. So it was one of those, literally the roll down windows. No nothing about that. The gearbox like shut down. And I had to get a whole, and it was like $900 to fix. Like it's going to wipe out my savings. And I was so happy that I actually had the money to do it. I wasn't even that upset that I had to blow my savings or anything, but that I could just like throw money at a problem because I'd saved responsibly. And that was like a very like both of those were, I think, were very defining moments in my like thought process of how I think about money and how I think about saving and spending and what you're spending it on. And that was my freshman year of college.
I think that that's a really helpful perspective because a lot of times, all of the social media and all of the folks who are successful, we hear, do you want to buy a jet? Do you want to buy a car? Do you want to be able to go and do whatever you want? But so much of it is stewardship and playing defensive as well. There's such a piece of being defensive with wealth. And a lot of times that's not as flashy to talk about, but that is the reality where when things come up in life and problems arise, that you are in a place and you're in a position to be able to take care of those. And man, that allows you to sleep better at night. And you can't put a price on that.
Oh yeah, I remember like as a kid, like lots of just fights in the house with money. And I remember so my mom, she is a real estate agent. I call her friends and family real estate agent, right? The one that's who her clients are. She hated prospecting. I always wondered why other real estate agents did so well, but she always had to, we were always so low on money. She had to take the check directly to the bank and to get the money from them because we couldn't even wait the 3 days for it to like process through. And I remember thinking like, gosh, that just doesn't seem like a big deal. It seems like a lot of work that we're doing going to the right bank to do that, and thinking like, gosh, we should. Man, when I get money, like I'm not gonna be like that. That just doesn't seem to be the way that I want to live my life from this. So unfortunately, with me, my parents, like I love them to death, but I learned a lot of like what not to do, being there and just kind of being raised in there and wondering, if we're gonna be able to have enough money to make that. And then of course, like the scariness of being like embarrassed of like, I fit into the middle class, but we just barely. And so someone like finding out, oh man, we're not, we're not wearing the right clothes, or we can't afford, new back to school clothes, stuff like that. And that kind of, I don't know, maybe it put me there were some parts, I'm sure my wife jokes about it, that put me on some maybe that pendulum swung to like unhealthy habits, kind of a thing. And she's, of course she's that good balance that brings me back into everything there. Just kind of going in since I got into college, I'll kind of tell you guys that. So I went to college. I was raised here in Oregon, but I went to college down in California, went to a Christian school. That was actually something super important to my mom. I thought I was going to go to University of Oregon. And here's the funny part about how you make your decisions, right? I thought I was going to, everyone's like, oh, you're going to be successful, and when you come from a job like environment or people that have jobs around you, they think of professional jobs, and so one thing that my mom spoke into me a lot was like being a doctor, kind of a thing. Like I should do that. And I took a class in high school. It was like a basic 101 level class your junior year. And they had us watching these blood pathogen videos and how to like, if an artery is, they're all so fake, but I passed out with like, apparently I don't like the sight of blood.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I guess I can't be that anymore. And so here's how a 16, 17-year-old mind thinks with the, without really any other people coming in to kind of help you, is I loved sports, played soccer, wrestling, and track. I was really good at those. And so I was like, I would love to be a coach. Like, I think I'd be a really good coach. And then I tracked with, well, all the coaches at my school were all teachers. So I should be a teacher. And so that was my thought process. And then you go to even further and you go, okay, well, what kind of a teacher do you want to be? Do you want to be PE, a math, a health, a teacher? Well, I liked reading books at that time. I found a couple of books that I really liked. So I thought I will be an English teacher, right? Because we get to read books in English class, kind of a thing. It's so funny. You don't think about like you pick the job, you pick the lifestyle that it gives you. And, here I am, 5 years into teaching and I'm grading the same essay, 100 of them in there. And like, that's what I think of is if hell, is out there and it exists and whatever it could be, it's grading 8th grade or 9th grade English papers on Animal Farm, all the time. It was just the most awful part of it. So anyway, I went to Christian college down there. I didn't have any money, which then precipitated me forcing me to have to like figure out a job. And so I went through my college, my freshman year. I had a very different college experience, I think, than a lot of people did. I didn't really enjoy college. I was so busy in college, I didn't really have a chance to enjoy it because I was playing, soccer. I was a very small scholarship soccer player, which just barely helped pay the bills at, a private Christian college.
Sure.
That was the other thing too, is I liked being at a Christian college, but, private tuition, like, again, no one, remember my first day, before you go, like my parents came down to bring like all my furniture and stuff like that. Yeah, I love football. I love sports. So like I always wanted to go to a football school. So I really wanted to go to the University of Oregon and it actually gotten accepted there. But then, I came down for a college preview day with one of the guys at my church down to Southern California to tiny little Christian college, Hope International University. I think there were 600 people at the college, and my graduating class at Reynolds High School I think was 800. So it was quite the like small school experience there, which was funny. There's also like a 5-to-1 girl to guy ratio there. I used to say, what was it, ring by spring or your money back.
Yeah. Hey, man, truth be told, I'd actually looked into Hope International when I was a high school student. I had some friends that had gone down there. What years were you there?
2002 to 2006.
Yeah, we would have almost crossed over had I've actually done that. But
Yeah, it was one of the more inexpensive Christian schools, which is funny to say. It's being down there, and you understand why. But small campus and super fun to be in Fullerton and everything. But yeah, my
yeah.
I would go. My days look like I had because college soccer is a lot different than high school soccer. So we would practice in the morning from like 6 to 8, and then I would have all my classes from 8 o'clock to like noon or 2, and we'd have practice all over again from 2:30 to 5 or so. And I would actually have
Mhm.
to leave class early to go to my job. And at one point, I worked at the Catal, which was the restaurant there, and then I ended up working at a place called Joe's Crab Shack, which I think Washington
Yeah,
had one for a little while there.
for a
In fact,
while.
actually, I worked at that one for my sophomore summer, so I could come back up here. But I mostly just stayed down in Southern California the whole time because I just had to work because I had to save up money and
Yeah.
keep money and everything like that. So that was that was all 4 years pretty much, was just I didn't have a ton of time um, between it, and I didn't do super great in school. Like I think I got a 3.0 or something like that, but I got all my college classes done. Moved on to being a teacher. Got into teaching at like 22, 23 years old. Not too far away. I taught in the Anaheim Union High School District, so I stuck. Fullerton is literally just the next city over from Anaheim. So I got into teaching in '07. This was literally the year before the crash.
Hmm.
It was like everyone knew something was going on. So I got hired in '07, the '07 to '08 year. And here's how it went. Like money was flush, right? There was a ton of money out there for everything. I remember when I first got hired, they're like, yeah, we're all going to a conference. It's like an $8,000 per person conference in Florida, like during next summer. Like, Dane, you should come with us. We're all going to go. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I think I was making like my wife and I both got hired right out of it. So we got engaged the year after college and then got married the year we both got hired into it. So we went from being poor college students to making, each of us made like 45 grand a year. So making 90 grand a year as a 22-year-old, when all my other friends are, not, they don't even have jobs, we were doing pretty well. But like halfway through, after the semester, there's always that teacher in service. It was '08 of January, and the administrator comes up to us and says, actually, we're really worried about our budget for next year. We're actually going to like we're going to pay the $4,000 deposit and keep the other $4,000 and like cut everyone from going. And I was like, oh, what is this going on?
Huh.
And then in California, in March, you have to get RIF notices, the reduction in force notices. And they didn't know what their budgets were like. So we got the reduction in force, and, it's a union. So it's first in, first out kind of a thing. Doesn't matter how good you were. And that was really frustrating too, because my wife Heather, and I, we were really good teachers. Like we studied hard, we connected with kids really well. Like we were really good teachers. We were kind of like a lot of like we were, for quite a few years, we were leading things. That's what happens when you're first year teachers. They ask you to do everything and you just do it.
Yeah.
Um, but for the first 4 years of our teaching career, Anaheim Union has 10 high school or 9 high schools and 9 middle schools. and we got moved to a new school every year. We got laid off every year. So we got told we were getting laid off in March, and then we would actually get laid off. And so we had no idea if we were going to have jobs. And so that actually precipitated us to saving. Like, I was very nervous. And so we lived in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, and I saved $30,000 every year that we moved.
Wow.
So that was our
It's huge.
initial nest egg. Was we just, we lived like college students because all my friends didn't have anything. So we didn't go out much. We hung out, played board games because that's what Christians do, for fun. And we, so we kept getting laid off. We kept getting to new schools. It was awful. When you're a teacher, I was a traveling teacher, so I'd have to push all my stuff from classroom to classroom on a cart. And that was kind of the first, part of this is not what I envisioned it to be. This teaching, I wasn't even coaching at the time, really, because, and coaching, I coached a little bit, but I was like, I can't justify my time. I think I made $2,200 for, coaching 1,000 hours. I think we figured out I made 0.8, when I was coaching wrestling my second year. I didn't make $1 an hour.
Wow.
I was like, this is not worth your time, because it is work. And I think by year 3 or 4, right, this is when the economy's starting to just barely get a little bit better. It's still rough, but it's barely getting a little bit better. And we had $70,000. And so I was like, well, gosh, what if I just do something to where I don't, because I figured out our 40-year plan. If you retire when you're 62, we would almost get what we were making at the end of what we were making as a teacher. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this until I'm 62. What if I could retire just in my 50s, 55 or 53 or something like that? That would be cool if I could retire just a little bit early and maybe have some extra income. So I'd dabbled in the stock market a little bit. I didn't know what I was doing, but I made a little bit of money because a rising tide raises all ships, but I had no idea what I was doing. And then about, I think it was year 5, we actually didn't get laid off. I had $100,000 saved up because we didn't spend any money. And to buy a house in California was actually still the economy was down enough. So we ended up buying a house in California, and we didn't buy that starter home, that 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I was like, let's just buy, because it's never going to be this good again. And we've saved up enough money. Let's just buy that next level home. So we bought a 4-bedroom, 4-bath house. This is in 2011 or 12. And we actually had my brother-in-law and sister-in-law living with us, because it's 4-bedroom, 4-bath, 2,600 square feet. This is in Lake Forest, California. So it's South Orange County, really nice area. And we had them paying $1,000 a month, and we paid, the other $1,200, and we kind of didn't know what it was called, but we're house hacking our way. Right. And so that allowed us to continue to save money. And I got another home equity line of credit on my house the next year because housing prices had raised, and we put a decent chunk down. And that was what I used. My mom. So like I said, my mom was a family and friends realtor. And, but one thing she was good at was short sales, and I think it's because she really connects with people, especially people that are down, people that are dealing with financial. She connects with them. She has some shared experience there with them. And she's always been really good at it. You have to find the short sales for her, but once she connects with those people, she does a really good job at it. And so she found us a short sale in Gresham, really close in downtown Gresham. And it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. It was, we ended up getting it for $67,000. This was
it's crazy.
2012, right? Yeah. And I didn't know how to change my oil. I don't know anything how to fix anything. That was not the father that I had was not a fix-it father. No one in my life showed me how to fix anything. And my brother was much more handy. He had a little more adversity and had to just learn how, and he did it. So I actually worked with my brother because he was getting his pilot's license. And if you know anything about getting your pilot's license, it's very expensive, and you get paid nothing for quite a while until you actually get hired on by a major. And so anyway, he worked on the house with me. I was in California at the time, So I flew up a couple times. I mean, and then we hired like 3 different contractors, but we ended up fumbling our way through a $55,000 renovation. And again, high tide raises all ships. Like we ended up selling it for 170, I think, and we made 52,000. And I split it with him, and I was like, "That's half my salary." And we did it all in like 3.5 months, and that was it. I was hooked.
That was it.
Like, this is amazing. This is how I'm going to do everything. I'm going to save up money this way, and I'm going to, I don't know what I was going to do, but I just thought, gosh, I could just make money, extra money doing this. And it wasn't like I wanted to stop teaching. I just was going to make extra money, like do a couple of these things. And the next 2 or 3 houses we found were not nearly as good. And this is like I think I was telling you, Nick, about this, like buying houses on market. I didn't know there was any, like the secret of how to buy houses and wholesaling and how to get them off market. I didn't know anything about it, right? I was just starting to listen to like Bigger Pockets, the podcast. And I still didn't really know how to do anything. So I would go back and I would look at Zillow all the time. We'd make a lot of offers. They wouldn't get accepted because even though it was 2013 and 14, still wasn't great. And I got, I learned a lot of lessons over those next 3 houses. So the next house I bought was on Farmington Road over in Beaverton, like a major 4-way road. And like we learned the lesson: don't ever buy a house on a major road. It doesn't sell well. Like we got it fixed up and everything in like a month, and it took us 6 months to sell it. And we made, I think, like $3,000. And I just ended up giving it all to my brother because we just didn't, we had to drop the price, holding on to it, even with a home equity line of credit, wasn't hard money, but it was a home equity line of credit. So that kind of brought it down. And then the next house that I bought, my cousin, who's a realtor, actually found for us. And he was like, just get lipstick, put lipstick on it, put carpet and paint. And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I know more. I'm going to do a whole remodel. I'm going to put like crown molding up and everything because this is a nice house. And we overflipped a house. So we actually like did way more work. And the people that came in and bought it, they loved it, but they were only willing to pay a price that other 3-bedroom, 2 baths were going to go for. So we ended up only making like 10 or 11 grand on that one. And I was like really frustrated and I didn't know what to do because I wanted to get back into that like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 flip. And that's where I met my guy named Sean Robbins. And he really has been like, he probably doesn't realize he's been a mentor to me, and he hasn't actually like taken on that role in any capacity, but he's definitely been a mentor to me. And he was what was called a wholesaler at the time. And he was doing some of these crazy things, not to get into it too much, of these sheriff's auctions, and which is where you go to the auction house and buy the house. But in sheriff's auctions, you actually don't get the deed for 6 months. You're buying just a bill of sale, and there's these things called redemption rights, which again, anyone listening to this, if you want to Google redemption rights and everything, there's a whole weird thing going on there with those. But he sold me the house, and he was like, hey, you're not going to get the deed, but I will get it for you. I can use my lawyer. We'll get it in 2 months because I own the redemption rights. I'm like, what is this thing? And I just really believed him, and and he's like one of the few people that I've done stupid things with and believed in. And he actually came through. And sure enough, he got the sheriff's deed and everything, and it was great. And we sold our house, we bought a property in Troutdale, fixed it up, sold it, made a $40,000 profit. And I'm like, bam, right, we're back into this. And so that kind of got me into, and I was like, well, gosh, I should learn how to do this. And to go from like buying houses on the RMLS and buying auction properties is as far, like there's a lot of other steps you can and should take. But I'm just in this mentality, like, I just want to learn. I want to learn how to do the hardest thing so that I have the least competition. And anyway, so I tried to do that. I was not very successful at learning how to grab redemption rights and do that kind of a thing. But what it did is it made me learn how to like buy from wholesalers and look for wholesalers and kind of grab one there. But I was still only flipping like 1 or 2 properties a year or so from about 2013 to about 2016. And a lot of it was like helping my brother out. He was a poor, guy trying to get his pilot's license and stuff. And that was kind of like one of our big things. So saved up a little bit of money that way. And then in 2015, wife and I decided it's time to start having kids, kind of a thing. And so we had our first kid. Wife, we had created a life for ourselves and had money saved up that she didn't have to work that year. So we were able to take that year off. She could take it off and still be a teacher. And then the second year, was really challenging having a 1-year-old. And we were lucky enough that the neighbor across the street, like, had a sister that would take care of her one-on-one. And we loved the neighbor, but it was $1,600 a month. It was $400 a week that we paid her, and that was a significant, it was almost like half of what Heather brought home. I was like, this is just not worth it. And so then the following year, 2013 was when we had my first child. And then 2015, we had our second child. And so same thing, she took a whole year off. And we were just like in the midst of that thinking, like, how is this going to work? Because definitely our neighbors across the street had moved. We were going to put our kids in childcare. And it's like, we have to leave the house at like 6:30. So our kids are going to be in childcare in Southern California from like 6:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Like, we're never going to see them. And it's going to be almost as expensive as like Heather's, salary. But if Heather stayed home, I mean, we still had a $600,000 house. Like, I wasn't going to make that work on a teacher's salary. And Heather, my wife, Southern California girl through and through. Every time she'd go up to Oregon, especially in the winter, it was just awful and miserable for her. But a testament to her, she was like, look, if we moved up to Oregon, could I be a stay-at-home mom? And I'm like, yes, without even thinking about it, because I want to move back up to Oregon. I missed Oregon so much. The weather changes and stuff, hey, it's fun to have, 80 degrees on Christmas, but it doesn't feel like Christmas to a person from the Pacific Northwest when it's there. So we ended up moving up to Oregon. I quit. We both quit our jobs in 2016, 2017. And I'd met, my brother had known this guy named Justin who had heard of me and was like, oh, this Dane Fitch guy's flipping all these properties and stuff, And we ended up meeting at a mutual friend's birthday party within the first month that Heather and I had moved there. And, the classic, our wives are on either side, and he and I are just having this bromance, for 3 hours talking about real estate. Like, and our wives are just rolling their eyes because they're so bored with the whole conversation. And so he and I decided, let's flip a property together. So I actually got a job teaching at Mooring Middle School that first year back, and I was like, if I could just flip, I could being at the state that I'm in flipping, I could do like 2 or 3 houses instead of just one house. So that'll help supplement our income. We were, we sold our house in Southern California, essentially bought a property outright in Gresham.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a mortgage payment. And my partner, Justin, and I, we flipped our first house. We did okay on it. And then we flipped the second and third house. And that was when in 2017, the housing market really took off. And I remember the day that I decided to quit my job. It was our 5th and 6th house got put on the market. And this is crazy because we thought we, instead of flipping 2 or 3, we'd flip like 4 or 5 together. And we ended up that first year flipping about 20 houses together.
Wow.
And it was really helpful to have him. He had this idea of hiring people. And of course, we were paying him under the table. We weren't doing any kind of bookkeeping really or anything. It was just coming in. Mm-hmm. And we flipped our 2 properties, and they both ended up being put on the market at the same time because we didn't flip one of them fast enough. And for the price that we put them on for, we were really only going to make like 20 or 30 grand between the 2 of them. It wasn't good. We overpaid for it. The flip went too expensive, but both of them within 5 hours had multiple offers on them and went for 20,000 over asking price. So we made 60 grand off that so easily. And I was like, that's way more than I even made. I made one day. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna quit my job. Like, this thing's going so well, I'm gonna quit my job, like everyone kind of thinks about.
Well, and Dane, I love that you've gotten to this point here, and I think we want to camp out a little bit on that transition. But in looking back, I love some of the steps you took and the wisdom that came from experience. Two of the big things I heard was, one, you were great at saving, and that was a huge piece to allowing you to get in the game. And then two, you didn't have a mentor, but you took action and started moving forward. So I think that's significant for people who get started. And before the episode, we were talking a little bit about how you are often now on the lending side working with newer investors. So curious, maybe just as a reflection point on your part, what are some things that you were able to learn aside from maybe saving, aside from taking action? What are some things that maybe you could impart wisdom on to newer investors or people who are just wanting to get in this game, and maybe that you've learned from your experience?
Yeah, I think number one, saving, like that's, I tell people, I meet with a lot of people. I have lots of meetings with them and stuff, especially after like doing some speaking gigs and stuff. And a lot of them are new. And the first question I ask them is, what do you have? What's your liquidity? What do you have in the bank? And no one will take you seriously at all if you don't have at least $10,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really, as a kid in your 20s, that should be your first goal, is to saving $10,000. Because if you can't have the self discipline to save $10,000, there's you should not be buying and selling real estate. There's too many problems. There's too much responsibility. That's kind of that first level of responsibility. This is the advice that I give to my 21-year-old nephew right now, who's kind of trying to work through and figure it out. He used to like trash out houses with me. And then like once you've done that, then like someone will take your money with their money and they might give you a percentage on it, or they'll let you work on it and share in some kind of like percentage. Then the next step is like, can you save 30,000? That's where you're like, you could be like almost a 50-50 split owner on a property. If you have $30,000, you can get in and partner on a flip and then in some kind of percentage, look at a partnership. And that's that first, jump to like creating wealth. And then once you have $100,000, now you're in the game. You're just like everyone else. You can do things on your own. You can carry yourself through probably a couple problems. Excuse me. And those are kind of like your first big barriers. And then from there, there's a ton more that you can have. But for newer investors, I think that's how you kind of have to think about it, is saving up. You're not even talking about the game unless you've got your first 10,000, and then really you're not in the game until you have about 30,000. And a lot of that is just the grind, and we a lot of the bigger pockets investors, I call them tire kickers, because it's 95% of them just hang out on the forums. They don't ever take action. And sometimes the action is like, we have fun talking about real estate is so fun. Look at all the TikToks, look at all the podcasts that are out here. It's fun to talk about it. You know what's not fun? Going under a crawl space and grabbing a dead cat or two from underneath there because you're the only one that will do it. Responding at 11 o'clock at night to a broken, busted pipe. These are the things that aren't fun, but the necessary things that are there for success. And being willing and setting yourself up to be able to do those things. So I think a lot of it is like being a good fiduciary, like with your finances. The hardest part in this game is cash flow, because a lot of times you're putting a ton of money out, like almost an endless pit of money out, and then you're only getting that money back after 3, 6, sometimes a year. One of the things that we talk about with lending, one of the biggest criteria of like these loans that I do for lending is experience. How many properties have you taken title to? We'll talk a lot of contractors that are like, oh, I flipped 25 homes. Well, you flipped it for an investor. So you've got, if investing is a 3-legged stool, right? And like doing the work is one leg, managing cash flow is, I think, way harder than actually figuring out people to do the work. And a lot of contractors are not good at managing cash flow, which is why a lot of, you hear about those horror stories of people not getting paid and, contractors running off mid-job because they didn't manage their own cash flow well enough. But I think like being able to manage your cash flows is huge, and especially on a fix and flip project, even like it's a lot of money. It's scary. Sometimes it's scary. Just you've never written a check or wired $30,000 or $50,000 to your account. kind of a thing. And it can get a little bit scary there. So I think, yeah, savings is definitely one way to do it, and the way that you think about it. Um,
And camping there for a minute, you're talking a little bit about the scariness that does come with this game. I mean, you've talked about the reward, you've lived through the reward, but the scariness is there. What are some other misconceptions that new investors or new people who want to get into the game, what are some of the misconceptions out there that you've heard? And after having lived through your journey, you're like, yeah, that's bogus.
let's talk about the Burr method, right? Brandon Turner needs to put that cow to pasture. Like, Burr, the reason Burr worked when he had it work was because you could buy properties so underpriced and so over, like, you could fix it up, and then within the 6 months that you fixed it up, the market went up 10%,
Right.
or 15%. So you got it on both. And so, yeah, doing a 50 or a 70% cash out, like, could possibly work, but it really doesn't. I mean, lenders really don't want to cash you out, especially after such a small, 6 month window or 3 month window. And I think everyone thinks that it's going to happen. And it is literally one of the more challenging, like, refinance, especially if you don't have a W 2 income, especially if you don't have a W 2
That's
income.
good.
Or, you quit your job. Like, the biggest thing is when you quit, and that was what I was kind of getting into, is like when I quit my job for the next 2 years, that was if I couldn't get a loan. It
Right.
was a joke. Like,
Right.
all my employees could get loans, but I couldn't get a loan for even just a basics, house. So there were a lot of things, like I was stuck with my family in a small house that when we were ready to move on. And that's kind of how, between that, we lost some money on some properties. And so when I quit my job, things got real tough because we tried to go legit. We got a contracting license. We got QuickBooks. We ran everything through one account. We had to pay all these extra taxes that we didn't realize we had to pay.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance for an employee, for a contractor, it's 30% of their salary. So you think you're paying someone $20 an hour, and really you're paying them about 30 an hour between all the insurance and taxes
Mm-hmm.
that you're having them do. We had an employee steal $10,000 from us on a credit card that we thought was totally trustworthy. We lost $100,000 on a house, and it was real easy and real simple. Like, it was a
Mm.
house in Lake Oswego that we bought from a wholesaler for $450 that we thought we could sell for $550. That we thought we would just put, $20,000 or $25,000 into and make like a quick 30 or 40 grand off of it. And within 4 months, it was, oh man, it's double the budget. There were certain things that came up, so it's 50 grand. And then, when only 2 houses were on the market, all of a sudden now 13 houses are on the market. And so between the hard money eating us one way and having to drop the price the other
Mm-hmm.
way, we ended up selling that house for $495. But because of the hard money costs that we've had on it, yeah, we lost about 80,000. That was our first loss. We lost about
Mm.
$80,000, and that was scary.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was very, um, and that's kind of what precipitated me into, like, talking to my partner Justin, being like, hey man, I think I need to go get a W-2 job. Like, I think I need to stop taking money from our company, that's not doing super well right now, and go get a W-2 job, because that's when we were doing the best. We'd sold 15, 16 properties. We made about $600,000 doing that. And it was like, we did it all while I was teaching. I just worked extra. And so I thought I was going to go back into a teaching gig. And so I was like, this is, I think, 2019. Yeah, it was the winter, right about this time of 2019. And I was like I was interviewing at other schools for the following teaching year. And I got this call from this company called Lending Home. And I was doing all my loans with them. I was one of their biggest borrowers in the Pacific Northwest. And it was their VP of capital markets, or of sales. He's like, hey, Dane, you wouldn't happen to know anyone that wants to be an originator? We're actually looking for someone in your geographical area, or would you ever consider being a loan originator? And I was like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. Like, and I'm looking for a job. And so we talked, and the starting salary on it was double what my teaching salary was. And then on top of that, we got paid commissions for the sales. on it. And I was like, this is so cool. So I actually started April 1st of 2019. That was my first day of starting at this company, which is a fintech company in San Francisco. So it was really funny to go from teaching in this 100-year-old building, praying that someone would give me something that was at least a 5-year or less laptop. And like the moment I walk into this building, it's two buildings away from the big, triangle building in San Francisco. They're paying for all my airfare. Bean bags everywhere. There's 3 kitchens fully stocked in this office. And I was like, oh, we're not in Kansas anymore. This is not.
Yeah, right.
So it was really fun and sad for education actually, but fun for, like you get to be a part of this company. And so yeah, so I got into lending that way, and it worked like, flipping, lending, and going, they worked really well together. Something else that I wanted to bring up, if it's okay too, is my partner and I were flipping for about 2 years, and we were making money. We had a couple losses and it was challenging, but we were making money, and we'd stop and we'd be like, where's our money at? Like, oh, it's in this project, it's in this project. And then we'd pay taxes, because when you flip properties, you pay taxes. And finally we're like, why is it that we have like no money? What's our end goal here? And it was, someone finally said, well, guys, real estate is owning and holding. Like, the only people that have wealth in real estate are people that hold properties. Like, you can flip properties, but you have to recognize you're not a real estate investor when you're flipping properties.
Right.
You own a job. You are self-employed. You just own your job at that point. You're not an investor until you actually buy, hold, and you're getting money coming in from it. And that was really big for us. And we got into Airbnbs kind of by accident. I found an awesome property over in Pacific City that I thought would be a flip. And we would drive out there and work on it, have this beautiful view of the bay. And one of our buddies was Airbnb-ing a property in Lincoln City and making $100,000 a year. That was really big. Kind of, we'd heard this heads on beds. And this is again in 2000. I want to say this is actually 2018 when this happened. And we're like, gosh, let's just put some furniture into it. If it goes wrong, the property's already staged. We just throw it on the market, so we don't have to worry about a whole, year-long lease. And in that, we bought the property for $275,000. It's a 6-bedroom, 7-bathroom, 4,000 square foot house.
Wow.
It used to be a bed and breakfast, is what it was. Like, there was
Sure.
and so every bedroom was a master in there.
Amazing.
And we put it on Airbnb, and that first year it did $87,000. I think we were all into it for about 400, and it did about $87,000. And then the next year it did 110. So we were just like, oh my gosh, this is it. This way, we were always really nervous about getting into month-to-month rentals in Oregon, because it's just so tenant friendly and has only gotten more, tenant friendly, and that scared us. So we just jumped into Airbnb because of the high cash flow. And so we would flip a property or two and then buy an Airbnb and flip a property or two. And that's how we ended up with, I think at this point we have like 12 properties now. I think it's like 42 doors or something, of which, we have 2 motels, one 10-unit, one 12-unit, a 4-plex and a triplex. And the rest of them are single family houses.
That's awesome. And what year was that you came across the Pacific City property and got into Airbnb?
Oh, it was real quick. It was like it's funny, again, not to go too long into that story, but we found it on Hubzu, of all places, and they were incorrectly marketing it. They were only marketing it in Pacific City and not marketing it to like Portland. I just found it, so it wasn't on the MLS or anything. I just found it on Hubzu because I just would go to that website as one of my like leads. And for 6 months, I would just make it, because the way Hubzu would work is you bid on it, right? And it would have a reserve, and they would lower the reserve every single time it wasn't met. So I just, for like 6 months, I would bid on this property, and there were tenants occupying it. Like, I think these people were scammed, but they were kind of sketchy people that were living in there anyway. They ended up getting fined because they were, in the house for more than 2 years, rent free essentially, but they paid like a high, someone got the lockbox code and gave them a key. They owned a bunch of birds, and they, anyway, so we ended up winning the bid, but it took us a year to actually get the property. Like, we didn't close on it or anything, but we would go out there and like try and facilitate cash for keys. to try and get them out, but we weren't closing on the property until they were evicted. And so after about a year, so I think it was about 2019 when we finally got the property, but it started
Wow.
more than a year prior to that, to getting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We still own it. It's a great property.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I mean, so much of your story it's kind of interesting to me, like how, I don't know if you'd say it's intentional or just fortunate, but you seem to have caught some really good waves in your real estate investing career in terms of, one, like you saw what was about to come in the 07, 08, and you were really smart to put away money and to live below your means. And then it seems like you were really able to capitalize on the bottom of the market in that like 2011, 2012 timeframe, made a great purchase on your personal residence in California. And then even, coming into the most recent story here with getting into Airbnb in kind of 2019, right as everything was starting to, who could have anticipated COVID and whatnot. But so you've done a great job of like catching these trends. And I am curious, one, if that's something that you are intentionally looking for. And I know that, there's all the investment advice about never trying to time the market, but I think that there are patterns that you can look for. So I'm curious about that piece. And then the second piece of that is, where do you see things going? Like, where do you see opportunity? I love those objective markers that you gave of, save your first 10. And once you're there, save your first 30. And once you're there, save your first 100. If you're to turn back the clock and you're going from your first 10 to your first 30, where are you deploying that capital? What kind of projects are you looking at based on the kind of market we're in today?
Okay. Let me go back to the first question. I'll answer that one first.
Yeah.
It was that one was what? What was that one again? That one.
Yeah, no, I apologize. It's strung together one massive question. So the first piece really is just how are you looking for patterns in the market, and what do you attribute catching these waves to?
Yeah, so luck for sure. Because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what the heck I was doing the first couple of years. Even the first year that I was with my partner Justin, and unfortunately, we had to learn a lot of lessons. I tell people, like, I went to private school and I have a master's degree in education administration. I could be a principal. I have probably 2 master's degrees in real estate and at least 1 PhD, like, or at least I paid for it over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was just, a lot of it is just being like the fundamentals of like being smart and intelligent. And I used to rip hard on Dave Ramsey, kind of a thing of like, oh, Dave Ramsey speaks to the low man who can't, isn't smart enough to understand how to leverage debt and how to do this or that thing. And my pendulum has come much back around to like, there is something about like having much less debt, or if even none, and just collecting cash flow and the emotional stability that you have from that. I think there's something absolutely to be said there.
It's underrated. Yeah.
It's very underrated. And I think especially when you're learning, like all these people that talk about BRRRR and doing these things, you have to operate at almost near perfection on your execution of the purchase, the renovations, and the refinance. And I've been in lending for 5 years. I've never experienced it with any of my clients where it's gone like that. It just doesn't. And so to then preach that to people and how easy and realistic it is just not true. But it is really easy to like buy a property, leave, if you put in $50,000, and you get back 20 or 25 grand eventually. And maybe it's you refinance it first, you wait a year or two to do that. And while you're doing that, you're using your W-2 income to create more, cash. It's real estate, I think, like a lot of it, we call it the success curve, right? The success curve doesn't go like this. It goes like this. It's like it's a very slow and then a jump at the end because you've built these parameters that really help you. get there. And so I think timing the market is, yes, I don't think you can time the market. I think it's just like stock market, right? If you're in it,
Right.
it's good, the good time, like great, you got that bump, but you you just can't. You're looking at human behavior, and human behavior is irrational, with the
Mhm.
markets. And so you just do sound financial principles, and you will catch those waves when they come. And then if you're in sound financial positions when it inevitably comes back and you're not over levered, you have the resources to survive. Because sometimes surviving through recessions and surviving through these whiplash, like interest rates rising, is enough to win later, right?
Hmm.
I mean, if you are smart enough, then you can even have enough to thrive during the downturns that are happening. But I think sometimes just having the resources to survive is fine, because I have a lot of clients, sadly, that are just barely, like, they're not really even surviving right now, but it's because they're over levered. They don't have options. They didn't, have sound financial principles, that are going into it. So yeah, I benefited a lot from it, but I also have, like, probably um, given up, like, through poor execution on projects. So here, you guys want to hear about some of the losers? Like, I'm really good at finding deals, and I'm really good at financing deals. And I've got really good uh, spider webs out with people that are willing to give me money. But a lot of that is because I've taken losses and made sure my investors always stay whole, so they're loyal to me. But I lost over $200,000 on a property last year on Marine Drive. We bought a property and thought we could fix it up. It ended up, contractor ran off with 75 grand of our money. We were dumb enough to give him 75 grand. We'd used him 5 times before, and everything seemed to be fine, but he ran off. We couldn't get the permits to fix what needed to happen. And 2 years later, the house actually now needed to be demolished because it was in such bad condition because the roof had been taken off of it. And so we ended up demoing it, having to do brand new construction for the first time. I totally thought I was going to be filing for bankruptcy during that, but I was lucky
Wow.
enough that,
Yeah.
like, and blessed enough that through the lending job, I had a couple really good years with lending, and I just put all my money into that and got us through and got us actually fixed and finished, and ended up still losing, $200,000 on it on paper. But I didn't go bankrupt. I paid back my loan. I paid back my investors, and lived to fight another day. And that was just from poor execution. And the same thing happened. Like, we had a bunch of friends all of a sudden get a bunch of money. They saw how well we were doing, wanted to jump in. And my partner Justin and I thought, oh, this is great. Let's go buy some stuff. We've got all this cash. And we went out and bought 2 motels that needed heavy work on them. And we didn't realize, we thought they'd each be about $250,000 in work. And they ended up each being about $600,000 in work. And instead of getting it done in 6 months and being ready for summer, each one of them took us 2 years to
Wow.
finish. And so the
Jeez.
carrying costs on that, I mean,
Yeah.
by the time you factor in the carrying costs, it was, $800,000, $900,000 each. And we didn't have loans for those. So again, it was like all of our money that we had saved up, and some of it we hadn't saved up, that we had to raise to go do those and get those finished. And, like, one of the motels that we have, we bought for 1.3 million. It's probably worth 2.5, maybe 2.4, but that's probably our cost basis in it. Like,
Hmm.
it sounds really cool, but that was a bad execution. If you badly execute, especially you get bigger and bigger projects and you don't think through it, like, you can lose in this game if you're bad at executing,
Well,
or
Dane,
you take on.
one of the things in that, like, first, thank you for being transparent, because I
Yeah.
think it's so easy to flaunt the flashy things. We just had another guest who says, one of the worst things they hate is people flash how many doors they have or how many deals they've done. And until you pull back the curtain, the reality of it is, even your cat story of climbing under to grab dead cats, that stuff It makes for a great campfire story, but not a lot of
That was
stuff on
just 6
social
months
media.
ago too. I've been doing this for, it's not like I didn't grow out of that magically, kind of
Right.
a thing.
Yeah.
No, but I think the transparency is what we oftentimes want to go for on this podcast because, you and I both as lenders have seen people do incredible things, but we've also seen the other side of that. And so, one, again, thanks for your transparency. Two, it sounds cliche, at least in my mind and coming out, but it's the question I got to ask. Like, you're still here, you're still in the game, but yet those are some significant losses. I mean, what average salary for people is 60, 80 grand for average Americans. I mean, that's multiple years of salary that you've lost on one deal you're sharing. Why are you still doing it?
Yeah. And it's learning, you still believe in it because you learn. And I think that's where it's that entrepreneur, right? That's the difference. What I've learned, you cannot make someone who's not an entrepreneur an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
And we've had a couple people at our church like want to do a flip with us, or even a couple of my friends do a flip. And it just inevitably like doesn't go exactly to plan. And they're very upset about it, and like there's relational difficulty. And you're like, oh, I realize like I've just normalized the difficulties that happen and the, like knowing that like I'm going to have a couple losses. I'm going to have more wins than losses, but I'm going to have a couple losses and I just have to like go through and problem solve through it. But some people like they don't, they're used to that 9 to 5. I work from 9 to 5. I get paid. Like I've worked on projects where I've worked for over a year on them, actively spent time and money on it, and I actually lost money. I would have been better off had I never.
Yeah.
It's one thing for people to think about like, oh, I worked on this and I made no money. I just like broke even. I made no money. But in this game, you can actually lose money. And that's a whole nother level of like, like mind blown that could happen. And,
Right.
if you dwell on it too much, and I have sometimes, like I've been up at night, a couple of years ago when I didn't have as high of an emotional tolerance as I have now. A lot of people will even say like, how do you deal with all the stress? Oh my gosh, it's so there. And it's only stress when you treat it like stress, right? It's like a muscle. I've just been working out and flexing that muscle so much. What seems to you a 9 to 5 person who, you're making your mortgage payment, you might have a credit card that's $3,000 that you're trying to like figure out a system to pay off. Well, I have 2 credit cards that have 150 grand on them, and I have $38,000 in mortgage payments, coming due every month and stuff like that. Like I've just normalized that and created plans for it. And, it still isn't fun, but it does, for someone else that would just, collapse on that. I've just, it's a muscle. I've just normalized it.
Yeah.
And so you normalize getting out of it. There's a poem that I used to teach all the time. It was one of my favorite ones. I did it for all 6th grade all the way up to middle school. It was this, I forget what the name of it is the whole or something, but it's essentially a five stanza whole a poem where, the first one is, I walk down the street, I fall into a hole. I can't figure out the way to get out. I scream and cry. I'm trying to get out. Someone finally finds me and grabs me and gets me out. Second stanza. I walk down the same street. I fall into the hole again. This time it still takes me a long time, but I'm able to get out by myself. Third stanza. I walk down the same street. I see the hole. I fall into it again. I'm frustrated. I'm really mad. I get out of the hole. I walk out, torn up, really upset. The fourth, stanza is I walk down the street. I see the hole. I walk around the hole. I go out. And then the fifth stanza is I go down a different street. And it's really fun to like go through it with kids and stuff and just kind of go through this, them trying to figure out what it's about and everything. But even adults, it's just like we do this still, don't we? We just walk down these streets. We make choices with our emotions. And I think so many people do that. I mean, that's what a lot of sales is like, kind of playing on that psychology of making emotional decisions. And I think when you can flex that muscle of like, I'm just going to think logically and I'm not going to let my emotions get a hold of me. I'm going to just get through this. and use my skills and my network that I have to problem solve through this without it. And it's less. I mean, I'm sure I get stressed just like everyone else. It's just my
Yeah.
stress muscle is much less, or it's just much stronger than other people's. So
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. And, dripping with wisdom with all of those, both poem and also life experiences. So grateful for that. I got one more question for you before we jump to our golden nugget final round here. But, we always love to kind of dive into the why. I mean, you shared that you have some kids, you keep going. What else for you? I mean, what are you passionate about? What else keeps you going for the future and keeps you going in spite of those challenging days?
yeah, I like that. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. The starting with why, and his is more why about, why the company exists. But, when you run your own company, you've got to have the why there. And for me, I think a lot of people, this is one of the reasons why I love what I do, lending. Yes, I lend at high interest rate loans, but I'm not lending on a car or an asset that's a depreciating asset that you should have no business. 99% of the times when I do a loan for a client and I'm helping them through that process, they're coming out with more money on the other end. They're helping them. And I just love the story of, most of the people that I work with are, um, their story's a lot like mine. They came from a blue collar, very low level white collar job. Something in their life, just said, this just isn't enough for me. And by the way, if you are someone who does, the 9 to 5 job, makes $45,000 a year and is super happy, spends tons of time with your family, like, great. We need people like
Mm-hmm.
you. I always tell people I have a sickness. My entrepreneurship sometimes is a sickness. It's a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah.
But you know, you your why of why we do it, and I kind of always have this vision of, like, I want to live an epic life. I want to have wealth so that I can help other people out. Which my partner Justin and I have done. We've done it for our family. We've done it for friends. I love being able to, like, just give away trips to my Airbnb, using it for charity. Sending off for a week.
Mm.
Like, that's always really fun to do.
Totally.
I love being generous, and if we're ever like go to dinner, my wife always knows whoever we're with dinner with, I'm always paying. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sliding my credit card there, and that's just like who I want to be. Um, I love, providing a life for my kids that they, don't have to make choices. Because I think wealth gives you choice, right? It's wealth. Wealth lives your life with choice.
Mm-hmm.
Can wealth make you a terrible person? I don't actually think it. I think you are already a terrible person. I think wealth just, whoever you are, it just magnifies that, right? The more wealth you have, it magnifies.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a terrible person, you're going to be an even more terrible person. But if you're a great person, like, it absolutely can magnify that, and it's great. And I think a lot of people that are wealthy, because of the self discipline they have to have and the self growth that you have to continue that, are really great people. You see in the movies all the time. It's just the wealthy people are the evil villains and stuff. And I think that the opposite is very, very true. But my why is, yeah, and really the reality is my why is, I would love to be a free father and a free husband, where I have financial freedom. And that has not been the case. That has been a contention. I mean, because of all the mistakes that I've made, and because, real estate is a challenging business, like, I'm not free. I mean, I was working probably 70 hours last week, between lending and between doing my stuff. I was not very, um, as present as I would have liked to be. And even now, like, looking at my portfolio and stuff, like, we've been going negative, because in the wintertime you go negative a lot. And it's been stressful to have to, like, put my own personal money into the company, to get there. Um, and so that's not it. And so we're even looking, at making some trimmings to our Airbnb portfolio, like, trimming a couple properties that we love. There's one of my favorite properties that I love on our Airbnb portfolio. It's in Pacific City. If you want to look it up, it's on Miles Lake, but it's 37 acres. It's a 4,000 square foot house, a 1990 or a 2008 manufactured home that's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and we own the whole lake. Like we own all the land under it, around it. It's a huge 37 acre lake, and we like paddleboard. We've gone, there every year for the last 3 years as a family for a week, and we bring my wife's whole side of the family and my whole side of the family because we can all fit there, and we just have a great time there. But it just, we bought it for 1.4 million, and we did a $250,000 renovation to it, and it doesn't pencil. Even though it brings in a decent amount of money, it was too expensive. And so we're going to give it one more year, and we got a couple ideas to try and make it work, but we very likely might have to sell it next year, and we might just break even on it. It's just kind of one of those things that it's not the fun thing to say, because it's a lot like showing that picture up on a couple of different, speaking gigs that I had. It was a lot of like peacocking and like, look, I made it. But the reality is it isn't. The house that makes the best money for us is this one in Sandy on the John Rudd Viewpoint. Doesn't even have a garage. And it's we could never sell it because no one wants to live without a garage. But we bought it for $480,000, put $20,000 in furniture, and the thing has done $120,000 revenue every single year for the last 4 years, like clockwork, and it's always booked. And it's like, who would have thought? I mean, it's got a great view, that's cool, but like, I did not think that was the thing that was gonna,
right, that was gonna pop.
So
that's awesome.
Oh, that's great.
But my last part, my why on those types of things, and like, what's your goal? Because I think you need to visualize it too, of what it is. Mine and my wife's, because we're in this together. Is we want to be financially free. I was hoping I would be financially free by 40. I just turned 40 last month. That didn't happen, so I'm not going to cry about it. But then it's like, okay, what do we need to adjust? Because you're constantly needing to adjust that. So my daughter is 10, and one of the hard things about it is like, if she goes off to college, and then if she doesn't come home again or something like that, like I've got 8 more summers with her, So I want to do one more big thing. I want to do the wealth, but I also want to pull back and really spend some good quality time. And one of the things is I want to have some epic vacations with my kids, and I make enough money that I could do that if I kind of trim up on some of my portfolio. And so even though it's like not a super, you're not growing, right? We're going to probably sell off a couple of our portfolio. For me, the quality of life that we'll get in the meantime is way more important to that. And then just the last thing, like I love having the goal. One of my like big pictures of like, the thing of have I made it is I would love to go rent a beachfront Greece, property for the summer, and my investments are making the money, and I just have the choice. Like, I don't think I'll ever stop working. I love looking at houses. I have an addiction.
Yeah.
I love it. I just, but I would love to be able to choose when and if I want to work on a house.
Yeah.
Versus, having to. And so that like view of like taking my kids and my family to Greece, waking up in the morning, 6 a.m. with my nice, Greek cup of coffee or whatnot, looking at a beautiful, sun rising and everything. And then just, checking through a couple emails, but being done before my kids wake up, closing my phone, knowing there's nothing I have to deal with. Everything can wait for me to look at it later. And we're just going to spend this whole day, and then we've got months to continue to do this.
I love that. Well, and you, one with your poem quote and 2 with your dream there of the Greece vacation, you've hit 2 of my gold nugget questions. So I'm going to fire the other ones at you real quick. So I got 2 more here. The first one is, we talk about the 5 F's at Abundant Journey. Pick one of these and tell me how you're working on growing this year. We got family, faith, fitness, finance, and future. What's one of those that you're really pressing in on?
Oh, well, I'm doing a lot of them, or I hope so. I think the 2 that I'm operating on, or I'm the most conscious of right now, are fitness and family. So I feel like I finally like solidified. I've been going to the gym, kind of like you, Nick, that CrossFit gym. I've kind of been toying with it. I went 2 months where I skipped it. because things just got too tough and difficult to like schedule it in. But it was like, man, I need to make time to do this. And I'm finally this month, I was just telling my wife like 2 days ago, like I actually now have I am there's a negative. I actually am negatively, I feel both body, mind, and soul like negative if I don't go. If I don't
Yeah.
go at 9 or I don't go at 4:30. Like I actually feel so much better when I go and I want to go. I actually want to, whereas, before I was like, oh God, I don't want to go. I'm just sit here, I can answer some emails, sit at my chair, kind of a thing. So that's like been the positive, like, okay, good, perfect. I've got the positive correlation with that, which is very critical whenever you're trying to change a habit.
Yeah.
By the way, anyone, if you are like that, you want to do some Atomic Habits, great book, fantastic.
100%.
Totally.
And then the family one, is the huge part for me, especially. And my wife's really great at helping me out and being very like generous with checking in and making sure she and I are good, that we have our consistent dates, and then also that, we're connecting with our kids one-on-one, that we're always discussing that. So she's phenomenal, my very, very good counterpart, while I do everything, real estate mogul and make all the money and everything like that. She's great about keeping me grounded with helping us, make sure we know why we're doing all this stuff. So
that's awesome. No, that's great. Well, last one ties into that one really, and it's just at the end of your life, what do you hope you'll be remembered for?
Yeah, legacy. Gosh, I know you get to be 40 and you start thinking about the end of your life. I really want to be known for relationships, that we made really great relationships with people and that we helped them out. One of the things I've been thinking about even for my kids is like, I don't know if my kids are going to get much of an inheritance. I actually think one of the better ways is to give your grandkids your inheritance. Your kids, they grow up around you. They should be getting the main majority of your mindset to be able to go create the money, to go out and create the lifestyle for them. And then, as grandkids, I think that's when you can utilize, having a leg up, especially as housing prices are. Like, if I could help my grandkids buy a house in their 20s, what kind of a life does that help them live? Are they able to have kids earlier? Again, wealth is all about choices. Like,
Right.
I want my families to be able to have the choice to live their lives, live it abundantly, and have relationships, and be able to be generous Christians. And, I don't want them to be stuck in the rat race, because this is a game, it is. If you think about it, it's very gamified everything, but it's also a toughness thing of, what can you say yes to? What can you say no to? What are the smart financial things that you make? And, I don't think the goal of, like, I don't want, Elon Musk. So one of the things that I brought up way earlier was one of my buddies, Sean. He's very wealthy, very, very wealthy. And I've asked him, I'm like, dude, you could retire now, because we had just sold Corvest, and he had made a really good chunk of money. And he was so generous. He actually offered me, it was a really helpful thing that he did when this company sold, that I got a little bit of a payout too, which was very, very helpful these last couple of years. And he didn't have to do that, but he just had his first kid, probably another one on the way. And I'm like, what's your end game, man? You could like retire. You could do that. He's like, nah, I never could. And not with Sean so much, but like, you think of like the Jeff Bezoses and the, these guys that are really ultra wealthy. Like, you look at the people that are mentors, the first thing you should look at when you're looking for a mentor is whose life you want, right? Whoever's life you want, their marriage, their relationship with their kids, their, relationships with other people, their wealth, the things that they have, if that's what you're looking for, like, that's what when you're looking for a mentor or someone to look up to. But it's like, I don't want Elon Musk's life. I don't want, to have 10 kids with, 7 different women. I don't want to be sleeping in my office, kind of a thing. And that's just me. And some people, like my brother, actually did a really good point. He's an airline pilot now for Alaska, and he makes finally good money. But there were times where I had to help him keep his condo from being foreclosed, and he worked 4 jobs. He had a 4-year degree, and he worked as a gas station attendant. He was a a pilot that was making, $16 an hour, training people whenever the weather was good, in Portland. I mean, he was barely making it work. And now he's making $250,000 a year. He just bought a trailer. He goes out on vacations all the time. And he's like, I've told him, like, dude, you could flip a house with me. We could go buy a boat with the proceeds, or we could do some stuff. He's like, don't take this offensively, but I see your life and I don't want it. I'm like, that's fair. That's fair, man. I get it. Like, that's fair. So,
yeah. Well, man, I love your life. I love what you've been able to build and put together. I'm so grateful for you taking the time to share your story with us. There's so much power in sharing stories, because for our listeners and even for Nick and I, we are able to see parts of ourselves in the stories of others, and it also expands the horizons of possibility. And kind of like what you were talking about with just what you normalize, where you start to think about, okay, maybe it is possible for me to start small, but then to get to the point where I'm doing a motel or a hotel or anyhow. And I love a lot of the uniqueness of your story too, of being willing to go back to the W-2 and seeing all of the benefits that allowed you to continue to build in your real estate portfolio. There's just so many great takeaways here. I'm excited for our listeners that have come along on this with us, and excited to see what you continue to build, especially as it sounds like pretty close to achieving that ultimate goal of the financial freedom.
Yeah, we're getting there, and I don't even know how it'll happen. Like, I've actually thought, like, lending, building a lending company is actually probably what I'll probably lean into a little harder than, like, getting the next Airbnb.
Yeah.
There's only so many times you can get texts, at 11 o'clock, or you go in your house and there's like, someone smoked weed in the house again, that you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Do I really want to deal with this?
One last piece of advice I can leave everyone is, like, slow and steady. Wealth is built slow and steady. Almost always the people that talk and the entertainment that happens of, like, getting rich quick, borrowing other people's money, doing all these things. It's like, you are not allowed to make a mistake in those strategies, and everyone makes mistakes.
That's good.
Slow and steady will keep your life well, and you'll blink, and 5 years you'll be much better off than you are. But the being able to sleep at night is worth so much more than chasing after the next dollar.
Yeah. I appreciate that, man. Hey, for our listeners that want to connect with you, follow your journey, or if any of them are looking for some loans on assets that they're pursuing, fix and flips, what's the best way for listeners to get in touch with you?
Yeah, emailing me, Dane at legacylendingus.com. That's my lending email. That's probably what I check the majority of my day for everything. And a lot of what I do, I love working with newer clients. My clients, I think, like me the most because I'm an originator that brings both the perspective of an investor as well as the lender. And so, a lot of times, I'm on the phone all day long because a lot of people will call me and be like, hey, Dane, I found this property. Can you walk me through it for 15 minutes? What do you think, both as an investor and then as a lender, what kind of terms could we get based on that? Mm-hmm. So that's what I do the most. And I think what my clients find the most valuable. And then, of course, we close on time and everything. But I also have my personal email, or the email that I do all my, like, personal stuff through, is just Rhapsody Real Estate. Rhapsody Real Estate is my investment company. It came from a book that like I said, I was a book reader. That's how I made my choice. That's how I made my choice of my name. It's not the best one because everyone's like, wait, how Rhapsody? It's like Bohemian Rhapsody, R-H.
Yeah.
It's rhapsodyrealestate@gmail.com. That one I don't get quite as much for. And then my phone number is 714-600-3581. I text or anything like that. People try and connect with me that way. But yeah.
Well, you're the man. I will include your email in the show notes for any listeners that do want to get in touch. So thank you so much for your time, Dane. Super grateful for you, man. And we'll definitely stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to grab coffee with you guys up in Washington sometime.
Absolutely, man. Let's make it happen.
All right. Listeners, thanks for hanging out with us. We will be back next week for another episode.